Hello everybody, I am Ayush. I take this opportunity to seek Dr. Deveriya's guidance on the enigma of human evolution and the widespread suffering. Here is how the interaction proceeded. Hello, may I ask you a few questions about evolution and human suffering?
Yeah, sure.
Can you please enlighten us about the concept of evolution?
Yes. So far, by the term evolution, we have been trying to interpret in terms of Darwin's theory of evolution. But after Darwin, a new concept of evolution has been unveiled by spiritualists, and that is spiritual evolution, which is part of the cosmic evolution. And the Darwin's theory of evolution deals with the evolution of species from amoeba to human beings. Needless to say that amoeba is a unicellular organism, and then after amoeba we have certain multicellular organisms, and then in that course, or say in the course of time, we have reptiles, and then we have such beings who could live in water as well as earth, amphibious, and then we have so many other species up to human beings. But before referring to human beings, we have to refer to the evolution from multicellular organism to monkeys. And monkeys are in a way nearer to human species because in other species the vertebral column is just horizontal, whereas among human beings it is vertical, and its sort of tendency to become vertical is noticeable among monkeys, and to be more specific, among chimpanzees. And now there is a deviation. We'll again come back to the evolution, the spiritual evolution, which is slightly different from the Darwin's theory of evolution. While Darwin says that evolution is a long journey between smaller species to fully developed species, and ultimately up to vertebrates. So, but the spiritual, while the the Darwin's evolution is concerned with evolution from monkeys to human beings, or if we refer to earlier phase, then to be plain we may say from unicellular to multicellular to fully developed monkeys to fully developed human beings. So now let us understand the difference between spiritual evolution and Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's theory of evolution is a gradual journey of the smallest species to the fully developed species. And Darwin says that it is based on the survival instinct, because evolution is survival of the fittest. Those species which adapted to the environment and which emerged as fittest for the environment could survive. And those who could not face the environment, then they became extinct. So This is how Darwin defines. But when we come to spiritual evolution, it is difficult to evolve spiritual evolution. But someone has observed that between human being and being human, there is a long journey. So, we are all human beings, but how many of us have evolved into being humans? That gives a sort of hint to the spiritual evolution. And spiritual evolution will be different from the physical evolution in the sense that a spiritually evolved person won't have 4 legs or 4 hands or 4 eyes. Whatever human anatomy we have will continue to remain the same. But in what way there will be spiritual evolution? There will be a sort of growth in human sensitivity. So, an evolved person is more likely to be considerate for others. He has an objective concept of evolution, so he may develop the sense of gratitude, he may develop the sense of empathy, he may visualize the suffering of others vis-a-vis his own. So, this sort of objective identification with the sufferings and feelings of other human beings is the beginning of spiritual evolution. When a dog eats a small species, he is not aware that he is doing a sin because his nervous system is not evolved enough. When a lion kills you, he doesn't think that he is doing something wrong because the lion doesn't have objective thinking. What human beings have is the orientation with objective thinking. And if you ask me, what other species have objective thinking or the beginning of objective thinking on the ladder of evolution? So, biologists and evolutionary scientists have quoted 3 species in whom the concept of, or we can say 3 species which had identified on objective plane. So now first example is when a dog sees a dog in the mirror, he starts barking because he thinks that another dog is there in the mirror, because he can't visualize that it is his own figure, because he is subjective, he is not objective. But if an elephant sees his image in the water, he won't be disturbed. Why? Because he knows that this is not the real one, but a reflection of his own being. So that way, the other species is dolphin. Dolphin can also identify objectively, and so many human beings have tamed the dolphins. The reason is they are able to interact on objective plane. And to some extent, chimpanzees are also having this faculty of objective verification. And chimpanzees are slightly more evolved than the monkeys. Monkey is a sort of package term for the earliest species which continue even today, but their more evolved form is in chimpanzees, who are more sensitive than the ordinary monkey. So that way we have chimpanzees, dolphins, and what else?
Elephants.
Elephants. Elephants have that objective perception. So, but human beings are the best in objective perception because they have qualities like compassion, they have qualities like empathy, they have qualities like perception on, on abstract plane, perception of abstract things, which the elephant doesn't have, which the dolphin doesn't have, and which the chimpanzees don't have. They have their objective sense, but it's not subtler. You say, for example, if you want to teach a chimpanzee meditation, you can't teach because chimpanzee can't comprehend the concept of meditation, but human beings can. So this is the difference between animals and human beings. And one more thing, what makes a human and what makes one to understand spiritualism. And that difference was defined by seers as the faculty of perception without any link of thought. I think this should suffice.
Okay. Also, could you tell us when you talk about spiritual evolution, is there any end to it? Is there any ultimate goal?
Yeah. Spiritual evolution means each one of the human beings is evolving into a better human being every second. And if somebody is not evolving as better human being every second, then he is degenerating as worse human being every second. So the purpose of evolution is to make your consciousness expand to such a level that you are able to identify or you are able to witness the source of consciousness. Whereas those those who are biologically evolved can perform better biological functions, but they cannot identify the source of consciousness. And human beings can identify the source of consciousness after a sort of trial and error method and after a sort of constant objective thinking without any prescriptive teaching, because prescriptions can never lead evolution. Whatever one learns is by trial and error method. So if you think that I read Hanuman Chalisa and I become superhuman being, no. If you think that you read some religious book and you become a better human being, no. The concept defined in Sanskrit scriptures is evolution means from Nar to Narayan. Narayan is a synonym for God. So, but it is not, it is restricted. Everybody who meditates is not God. Everybody who identifies with the source of consciousness is not God. Why? Because each one of us shares consciousness and draws his consciousness from the ocean of consciousness. And ocean of consciousness is the origin of consciousness, source of consciousness. And in other parlance, we call God as source of consciousness. And our consciousness is also derived from the source of consciousness, but it is a unit of consciousness, and its sensitivity or its intensity cannot be compared with the intensity of the source of consciousness, which is not measurable, which is infinite. So once a human being realizes that yes, he is a part of the consciousness, all-pervading consciousness, but at the same time, his consciousness is not a very developed sort of one, because he is still a member of the unit of consciousness, and a single member of unit of consciousness cannot absorb the source of consciousness. About God, we say that he is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, present everywhere. But we have our limited forms, say 6 feet height. So a 6 feet height, a form having 6 feet height cannot include the cosmos. But cosmos can include the individual unit which has a height of 5 feet or 6 feet or even more. So that way, the intensity of individual consciousness is always less than the intensity of the source of consciousness. So when they say spiritual evolution is one that makes one that makes the Narayan.
What is Nar?
Nar is human being, man.
And Narayan
is God.
Okay.
Narayan is symbolic God, not the all-pervading God. Means the authors of our scriptures, the seers of our scriptures had observed that even if one can identify that his consciousness is part of the source of consciousness, that is the beginning of the identification with God.
Okay.
And once you have the identification with the real God, that is the source of consciousness, then your journey as human being has reached the beginning of spiritual evolution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And is the term enlightenment related?
Yeah. Enlightenment is what? Enlightenment is, literally, if we ask enlightenment, it is sudden realization or sudden visualization. All of a sudden, you visualize something or you know something that comes out of you, without your efforts, without thinking anything, without theorizing anything. And if something clicks before you, so that is enlightenment, because it enlightens you. In human history, Buddha is considered enlightened. The meaning of Buddha is the enlightened one. And so when we in English, we don't say Buddha, we say the Buddha. But with Mahavir, we don't say the Mahavir, because Mahavir is a name, it is a noun, and Buddha is an adjective, the enlightened one. So whosoever gets that sudden glimpse of which he had never thought, and which is different from the whatever he knows through science or through humanities or through psychoanalysis, it's different from all that which he knows. Hence, Jiddu Krishnamurti had termed it as freedom from the known. When you become free from the known, you become free from the known only when you get a glimpse of the unknown. And unknown is that which you do not know so far, which is not included in any book, which is not included in any prescriptive learning. So that is in enlightenment. And there is one more word that is called apocalypse. There is difference between apocalypse and enlightenment. Apocalypse is some explanation which is revealed or say which is unveiled to a human being because of his quest for that. It also indicates something about the coming events. But enlightenment is different from the information about the coming events, because enlightenment connects you with the source of consciousness, with the eternity of consciousness, with the infinite ocean of consciousness. And even during enlightenment, one just gets a glimpse. That glimpse itself is considered a rarest of the rare privileges. And all the philosophers were not enlightened. All the prophets were not enlightened. Even among avatars, all the avatars were not enlightened. They were one step ahead the prevailing level of human evolution. We say about Ram, we don't say Ram the prophet, or we don't say, people have made him the avatar, and he is very much an avatar, but the trouble is, the real adjective with Ram is Maryada Purushottam Ram.
Meaning?
Maryada Purushottam means Uttam, the best among Purush. So, Ram was the highest evolved person within human limitations, within the limitations of a person, hence called Purushottam. That was his real adjective. And Krishna is also referred to as avatar, but Krishna is referred to as Yogiraj, a complete avatar, a full avatar. Why? Because Yogiraj means what? King of yogis. And king of yogis means what? Yogi is what? Yogi is one who knows yoga. And yoga, what is yoga? Yoga means what? Yoga means joining. So when the individual soul joins, or when the individual unit of consciousness joins the ocean of consciousness, then yoga is complete. So, but that is not through thoughts. When you sit for meditation, you have to ignore all thoughts. What Patanjali says, Yoga Chitta Vriddhi Nirodha. Yoga is the inhibition of all the tendencies of mind. And what are the tendencies? Thinking, thought is the most dominant tendency. And through thought, you will never be enlightened. It's only when you ignore all that which you already know. That is, when you ignore thought, when you ignore all the words and think of nothing, then perhaps you may get a glimpse of what is called enlightenment.
Okay, that was very enlightening. My next question is, so you talked a lot about evolution. Now, is there any link between your concept of evolution and human suffering?
Yeah. There is very much relationship, because in biological evolution, the survival of the fittest is the guiding principle. And in spiritual evolution, you just evolve if you indulge in eat, drink and be merry sort of life. You evolve when you are able to learn by trial and error method. And when you learn trial and error method, you commit certain mistakes also. And whenever you commit certain mistakes, as a result of those mistakes, you have to suffer also. So that way, every time you learn, suffering comes in some form or the other. And this was beautifully explained by Buddha, the Buddha, you should say. Because the Buddha says that what human beings learn is mainly through suffering. And he says, what is suffering? The Buddha says, life is suffering. Birth is suffering, death is suffering, and I'll repeat, life is suffering, death is suffering, and the ailments are suffering, old age is suffering, and the presence of unloved ones is suffering, and the absence of loved ones is suffering. And these are all sufferings. And further, the Buddha prescribes a formula which is referred to as Arya Satyas or Noble Truths. And they are They are four, so they are referred to as four noble truths or four Arya Satya, in which he defines that if you follow these four postulates, then there is every chance that you can reduce your suffering or you may altogether escape your suffering. But that will be a deviation from your question, so I am confining it only to Buddha's definition of suffering and his solution to escape suffering.
Okay. Also, so everyone, how can science help us to understand evolution?
Science helps us a lot, and at a higher level, science and metaphysics merge together. And when Einstein says that religion is blind without science, and science is also handicapped without religion, what does it mean? It means that whatever we learn or practice in religion should not be a blind faith. It should be adjudicated on scientific considerations. And similarly, what science preaches should also be subject to constant review. And if you go on reviewing your scientific postulates as well as your postulates of religion, and step by step, then a step will come when you will find both of them as one. The reason is what science says. Let us confine ourselves to physics. What physics says that the smallest particle is subatomic particle. No.
Yeah.
Your electron, neutron, proton, positron.
Quarks.
So they are all the ultimate constituents of an atom. So the ultimate particles which constitute the existence. And this is what science says. And what religion says, religion is not analytical. So religion doesn't talk in the language of electrons, protons and positrons. Language talks in terms of integration, in terms of holistic approach. And when they refer to the holistic approach, what they mean is your constant observations of the spiritual truth should be such that at the end you are able to integrate all your postulates of spiritual learning. And when you are able to integrate, then there is a shlok in Ishavasya Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Avshishyate. That means this universe is complete. The universe which we are able to see is complete in itself. And similarly, there is another universe which we are not able to see. So that universe which we are able to see is complete in itself, and that universe is also complete in itself which we are not able to see. And subsequently it says that Purnamadaya Purnameva Avshishyate. When you take out whole or complete out of complete, then what remains is also complete. And if we make an analogy with in the concept of infinity in mathematics, then we can deduct. If I say deduct 10 out of infinity, you cannot deduct, because only infinity can be deducted from infinity. and only infinity can be added to infinity, and only infinity can be multiplied with infinity, and only infinity can be divided by infinity. So that is the integration of physics, that is the integration of philosophies, we can say metaphysics. So while physics is analytical and traces the fundamental constituents of existence, metaphysics says that let us see the whole picture. If you know the whole, you will automatically know about the parts. So our concept of particles is a concept of physics, and when you are able to understand physics, so in the physics also, the ultimate analysis doesn't stop at protons, electrons, and neutrons. It has further evolved into a theory of
even subatomic particles.
no, it has further evolved into quantum theory. And why it has evolved into quantum theory? Scientists said that these particles at times look like particles and at times they look like waves. So this phenomenon was this phenomenon led Planck to observe that the common name that can be assigned to the study of these particles, which are at times energy and which at times particle, that can be further studied under quantum theory. And quantum theory also went 5 revisions before finalization. And it was quantum theory that enabled Einstein to postulate his theory of general relativity. Am I correct? No.
But he had contributions to both. Yes.
Yeah, that's there. But am I wrong when I say that quantum theory, in a way, quantum theory was a great help to Einstein?
For his career, yes.
Yes, that's all. I mean to say that only. There may be some riders, there may be some finer aspects which may be used, which may be put in the language of physics, provided further that. That's different. But by and large, I have generalized that.
Yeah.
And perhaps you will agree with that. And one more thing, you had asked me about psychology some time back.
Yeah.
So I will say psychology is also both metaphysics as well as physics. How? Because psychology was ranged out of the bosom of philosophy. In the beginning, psychology was the part of philosophy, but subsequently it was bifurcated. The way electrical engineering was bifurcated into electronics and electrical engineering. Electronics were further bifurcated into electronics and industrial electronics, and further into computers. So that way, as long as there is progress in the research, there may be some subdivisions, there may be some partitions. So to begin with, psychology began as a theory which worked as a part of philosophy, then separated from philosophy. And why it was separated from philosophy? The first definition of psychology was given as a science of behavior. So people said that philosophy is also a science of behavior. So no, the scholars of psychology clarified that philosophy teaches you how to behave, and psychology studies philosophy as the behavior as it is, not as it ought to be. In philosophy, we study behavior as it ought to be. In psychology, we study it as the behavior which is as it is. So this is the difference. But subsequent, when all the theories and all the analytical aspects of psychology were over, then there was further bifurcation in psychology. So the theoretical philosophy, descriptive philosophy was known as psychology of philosophy. So the descriptive part of psychology was continued as psychology, but sooner than later, the psychologists realized that the behavior originates in human beings' brain, and if there is something wrong with the brain, the behavior is also bound to be affected by that. So then the tendencies of mind, tendencies of behavior were subsequently studied under neurology, which is studied in MBBS. So then that part of neurology, that part of behavior or that part of neurology focused to the functioning or malfunctioning of brain was called psychiatry. And psychiatry is concerned with the diagnosis of mental ailments caused due to some reason or the other. And the medical analysis or surgery or treatment of that aspect of that ailment. Whereas theoretical psychology is confined to theories and analysis. It can't diagnose the mental ailment, it can't prescribe medicine. But psychiatry can prescribe medicine because it is part of medical science. And people study it in MBBS as well as also at postgraduate level. So when at postgraduate level they study, it is called neuropsychiatry. And neurosurgeons perform operations of brains also. That's still further. Okay.
So to bring it together, how does psychology link with the aspect of cosmic evolution that you talked about?
Yeah, psychology is linked with the concept of cosmic evolution because psychology is again a branch of learning focused on human behavior, and human behavior is governed by consciousness. And if there is something in the brain functioning, then there will be difference between perception and its translation into perception and its translation into cognition, means its translation into the language that concludes what was perceived. So that way psychology is very much concerned with philosophy and evolution, because those suffering, a healthy person, a mentally normal person can focus on meditation, but an abnormal person who is suffering from some mental ailment cannot focus on meditation because his objective identification and his faculty of objective perception and abstract perception is gone, or in a way is blurred, so he can't distinguish.
Yeah. And just one last question to bring this all together. Regarding evolution, right? What is your vision for the human race? Sometime in the future, do you think humans would have evolved to a point where human suffering would be zero or very less?
Yeah, definitely we will reach a level when our human suffering will be minimized. If you compare it with the suffering of before 200 years and the suffering today, there is already a lot, you can visualize a lot. Say before 200 years, If you lost your vision, it could not be restored. But now by surgery we can restore. Similarly, if someone was suffering from infectious disease, he died. Now we have antibiotics and powerful medicines which can cure you, and again you may become healthy, you may become normal, you may perform your day-to-day functioning. So this sort of things are going on, but it took time since the birth of the aboriginals to this stage. It took at least thousands of years that we came to our present status. So if we start to grow spiritually, there is a possibility that every human being will be able to visualize his connection with the source of consciousness. And once that is visualized, then he will develop all the virtuous qualities of the source of consciousness. Then there will be no violence, then there will be no killing, then there will be no selfishness, then there will be no unhealthy competition, sort of cutthroat competition. There will be no violence, but violence will remain in the form where you have to deal with an entity who has no objective consciousness. Say you are facing a lion and lion will attack you. So there non-violence will not work. There you have to shoot the lion. Otherwise he will devour you. So that sort of for protection, certain things will be required, but the general tendency of violence will be curbed and will be minimized.
Okay.
I think you are comfortable with these answers.
Yes. Thanks a lot for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you. So can we call it a day?
Yes. See you in the next episode.
Okay, God bless you.